It's official.
I've been thinking about this a lot, but Mortal 1 Kombat's story doesn't make any sense. It's a new timeline created by Liu Kang after the events of MK11 Aftermath, which concluded with a climactic showdown between Fire Thunder God Liu Kang and Timekeeper Shang Tsung. After this, the timeline is reset proper, and the changes are astronomical, to say the least. Some concepts and characters remain largely unchanged, experiencing only some tweaking to their stories and histories, while others are virtually unrecognizable from who or what they used to be. I get what they're going for here. It's the next best thing to a hard reboot, still acknowledging some of the previous history by having Liu Kang act as Timekeeper, while having a world largely altered for the sake of having a new story to tell. It feels largely like NetherRealm is trying to have their cake and eat it too, which isn't a bad thing. I'm all for shooting for the moon, and I generally prefer ambition to playing it safe, as it leads to much more passion and creativity. But what the hell is the plan here? The more I think about it, the more Mortal 1 Kombat's plot doesn't make any sense to me, and it all boils down to Liu Kang himself. His bio claims that the piece he created is being threatened by something he could never have anticipated. Many fans speculated the unknown threat was Onaga, even though the exact same bio states that he neutralized every threat that came before, so that wouldn't even make sense in the first place. Liu Kang is the Keeper of Time, and some idiotic statement about not being able to perfectly foresee the future doesn't excuse whatever threats may rise under his watch. Don't tell me he can't perfectly see through time when Shang Tsung in his MK11 ending claims to have traversed literal, infinite possible timelines, and Aftermath mentions that Liu Kang foresaw that Shang Tsung was the only one who could properly use the crown, leading to him setting up the events of Aftermath to go exactly the way he wanted it to. Seems like some pretty flawless future perception if you ask me. Bringing this back to Shao Kahn, because that's where all my videos will inevitably end up, if Liu Kang supposedly neutralized all past enemies in his new timeline, then what's the explanation for General Shao? He completely stripped Shang Tsung of everything that made him who he was in the previous timelines, but the worst he could do to Kahn was give him a little demotion? Especially considering the way he's being built up in this new timeline as a respected warrior and essentially the second highest authority in Outworld, besides the up-and-coming princesses. Liu Kang did a pretty piss-poor job neutralizing Kahn, and if you want to attribute his being born sickly and frail to Liu Kang, why didn't he do anything to prevent him from being groomed into the perfect warrior by his father? It just rings as extremely inconsistent with his intentions, especially now that the Rulers of Outworld trailer has dropped and we can now see that Shao isn't much different from how NRS pretends he used to be. Aggressive, violent, and war-driven. Maybe Liu Kang is aware, like the rest of us are, that he's more brawn than brains now, and thus isn't really worried about him. And even if you want to say that Kronika is the reason that Shao Kahn bulked up, that still doesn't explain why Liu Kang didn't do anything about him once he realized that he had. But I don't want to make this another Shao Kahn rant. I could make that into a whole other video, maybe even a follow-up to my first one. Getting back on topic, the way the story and characters are being presented just leads to many questions, and they all relate back to Liu Kang. Recent reveals explain away the unexpected threat aspect of the story, because I don't think anybody expected them to bring Kronika back. Only the most die-hard of fans have anything positive to say about her, and at that point, I don't think they're really worth listening to because they're happy with literally anything. Let's get this out of the way real quick. Being negative about something doesn't mean you dislike it, or that you don't deserve to be a fan, or are less of a fan than someone who happily accepts everything a series does, good or bad. Just like with ideas, to be truly loyal to something you love, you have to be willing to challenge and question it so that you can hopefully make it stronger. To be loyal to an idea is to be willing to betray it. Strict adherence accomplishes nothing and leads only to narrow-minded ignorance. The only difference between haters and stans is what they have to say about whatever they're talking about. That said, I'm gonna combine two of the video ideas I had from my last poll into this one, since it ties into the topic of this one rather nicely. That topic is the true villain of M1K. From the first trailer trailer on, until we saw more stuff be released for the game, I speculated Liu Kang was going to be the villain. I'm still going to guess he's the antagonist until the game releases and the full story drops, just so I can say that I called it if it really does happen, which I'm 98% certain at this point that it won't. My reason for thinking this was simply, who else could it have been? At the time, we didn't know Kronika would have anything to do with the new release. She literally got killed off at the end of MK11 and again in Aftermath, so there was absolutely no reason for anybody to assume she would be making a return until we literally saw it in the gameplay reveal. Thus, the unanticipated threat couldn't have been anything that would have made any sense, because he should have seen coming any threats that exist within the boundaries of time. It couldn't possibly have been any threat we've seen before for exactly that reason. We've seen them before, so Liu Kang has as well. That's how being the Keeper of Time works, even with supposed imperfect perception of the future. Because of this, I believed Liu Kang would be the antagonist because he's overextending. He's not considering the larger picture. For all of Kronika's fault, it makes sense that someone who oversees time wouldn't interfere in the affairs of the timeline unless it became absolutely necessary to do so. But for some reason, he's acting like he's Earthrealm's protector, a role that Raiden served as a lesser god. It doesn't make sense for the Guardian of Time to do something like that, and it comes across as human error or lack of foresight. He's literally playing favorites with realms, while also holding a position above the Elder Gods, who themselves were supposed to be impartial, and only intervened when Shao Kahn got so good at conquering realms it threatened the return of the One Being, which would have wiped out everything. Back to Liu Kang being the villain, doesn't it just make sense? Who else could possibly threaten him at this point? Whether you want to believe Kronika is or is not above the One Being doesn't really matter. Forewarning, she isn't. But either way, she's the single most powerful entity, supposedly, that the cast has ever faced. So when Liu Kang inherits her power along with Raiden's, there are only two ways his character could go. Either he creates his new era and takes a backseat role, kind of watching over things as a silent observer, or he goes too far in trying to influence and fix history and becomes the villain. Any other story for him just doesn't work or make sense, all stemming from him having Kronika's power. He can't be protector of Earthrealm because he's the Keeper of Time, and so he has obligations that extend beyond the realms. Doing anything other than trying to maintain the stability of time just feels like he's overextending and interfering where he has no right to, and I don't care that he has good intentions. It should be painted as a negative that he would do this, since Kronika basically did the same thing, only she actually let the timelines play out and only intervened when things became irredeemable in her eyes. Liu Kang is looking at his role from the perspective of a guy who was born and raised in Earthrealm and has fought tooth and nail to protect it, not from the higher perspective Kronika had. Yes, her vision was ultimately extremely flawed, but it doesn't look like Liu Kang's is all that stable either. It might look better on the surface, but the seeds are already being sown for something wicked and he doesn't seem all too keen to do anything about it either. Even if he doesn't know about Kronika, why doesn't he do anything about General Shao? He's clearly not all that different from the version of him that the monk turned god knew from MK11. All that's really different is his status, and the seeds seem to be getting sown to put him on the throne, or at least make a play for it. Why would he just let that happen? Is it because he's Earthrealm's protector and concerns himself mainly with their affairs? Well, again, it doesn't work because he's the Keeper of Time now. He is what Kronika used to be. Why is he not keeping his eye on every realm and instead pretending he's what Raiden used to be? Because he's not. For that matter, why did he make a new Raiden as champion of Earth instead of keeping Raiden as his advisor and allowing Kung Lao, his best friend, to have his time to shine? He's already proven in MK9 that he's more than capable of it. He only lost because he got blindsided. Even if you want to say Shao Kahn would have beaten him anyway, which I do think he would have, Liu Kang couldn't have known that. But even if he did, isn't that the beauty of a new timeline? Also, why the fuck does Raiden even have lightning powers? Unless Fire, Thunder, Time God Liu Kang is now just Fire Time God Liu Kang. Raiden gave up his power to strengthen Liu Kang. Unless it's like Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 where Raiden forsook his divinity to help Earthrealm in the fight against Khan and could still use his lightning powers. I always assumed in MK11 that he gave Liu his divinity and his powers. So that's a little weird how everything other than his appearance and voice still reads of Divine Thunder God Raiden. It all just comes across as extremely bizarre and strange to me. Liu Kang already demonstrated a darker darker side when he sacrificed everyone in Aftermath to get the outcome he wanted. It doesn't matter that his goal was benevolent. He manipulated and orchestrated the events of the story that everyone he knows and loves is systematically dissected and tortured and slaughtered by his greatest enemies, all for the sake of leading to Shang Tsung taking the crown and killing Kronika, just so that he could claim it for himself and restart time. How is that any different than something Shang Tsung himself would do, or Shao Kahn, or anything Kronika herself did? With all of that, why does he not become the villain? How does he not become the villain? How are we expected to buy that any threat can possibly exist when Liu Kang, debatably the greatest fighter in all of Mortal Kombat, now empowered with Kronika and Raiden's divine power, seems to be taking a very active and hands-on role as Earthrealm's guardian? In fact, why did he even create a tournament at all? Tournaments are designed to incite conflict, even if it's in good faith. But when you have guys like General Shao in Outworld, why even make anyone fight him if you don't have to? It's illogical, it's dumb, and I think it's against his character. Granted, making him the bad guy would also be out of character, but you know what they say, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Thanks so much for watching. I've recently started a Patreon, and I would be eternally grateful if you guys could check it out. I have $1, $5, and $15 subscriptions available, and anything you guys would be willing to give will go towards keeping up my channel and general livelihood. I'm trying to make this a full-time deal, but until I can do that, I don't have a lot coming in and need to do what I can to keep myself afloat. I appreciate all your support, and I hope to see you all in the next video.
That was pathetic.